All right, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Please note that this webinar will be recorded. If you miss anything or need to log out before the end, we'll be sending out an email with the link to view the recording later this week. We'll start with some introductions. My name is Megan Ball. I'm an admission counselor at MCPHS in Manchester, working with the applicants to the Accelerated PA program, specifically for Manchester.
Hello, my name is Nikila. I am also an admissions counselor over on our Worcester campus, primarily working with PA, as well as our healthcare business and technology programs. And I will pass it on over to our Boston campus.
Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Christine Kademi. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions, primarily working with our Boston PA program applicants. We'll pass it off to either Miriam or Jessica, whichever student wants to introduce themselves first.
Hi everyone, my name is Miriam. I'm a first-year PA student here at the Worcester campus.
Hi everyone, my name's Jess. I'm a first-year PA student here on the Manchester campus.
We're pleased to be here to talk about the university program offerings for the School of Physician Assistant Studies. During the session, we'll talk a bit about the university, the different PA programs that we offer, how to apply, and we'll finish up with a question and answer session. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A box in the corner of your screen for us to answer after the presentation. Let's get started. First off, congratulations on your decision to pursue a career in healthcare. Healthcare is a great field to get into right now. Not only is healthcare one of the largest employers in the US, but with an aging population, job openings are projected to increase over the next decade or so. Our students are finding job placements soon after graduation, some even receiving job offers before they graduate. As future PA applicants, you probably already know that the profession has been ranked among the top healthcare careers by US News and World Report for several years running. We realize that returning to school for your master's degree will be an investment of both time and money. But based on the current job outlook, future job security, and quality of education MCPHS can provide, we believe this is a good investment of resources. MCPHS is a healthcare-specific university offering 100 programs in different fields. Healthcare is our specialty. Many of our faculty have clinical sites where they work part-time. Being active providers, they're up to date on our current healthcare system. Additionally, the students around you are working towards other healthcare professions. Through school-sponsored events and other social activities, you'll learn a lot about different healthcare professions even before entering the field. Second, we've been around for a long time. The university just celebrated our 200th anniversary. We started with just a pharmacy program in Boston and have grown a lot. We now have over 7,000 students between our 3 campuses and our online branch. Finally, MCPHS prides itself on maintaining clinical affiliations with some of the leading medical institutions in the nation. Some well-known sites where our PA students regularly complete rotations are sites such as UMass Memorial in Worcester, Mass Gen Brigham, etc. MCPHS has a lot to offer our students, a few of which we'll touch upon in this slide. Miriam, Jessica, I'll turn it over to you.
I'll start first, specifically with the interprofessional education. This is something I think is very specific to MCPHS. I didn't hear about it a lot at any other schools, which is one of the reasons why I was drawn here. It's a once per semester, students will participate in activities with students of other healthcare professions. So occupational therapy, nursing, I know some of the other programs in Worcester get to participate. There's a smaller amount in Manchester. But this is where we'll get to engage in like patient scenarios or discuss things with different professions, just to kind of understand where they're at, where they're coming from with their clinical perspective. And it honestly is very helpful to make you more well-rounded as a provider, because as PAs, we'll be working with other professions so closely. So learning how to do this in a school setting was super beneficial moving on.
And on the Manchester campus, there's a lot of support. You're entering a very rigorous program. You're going to have faculty advisors, CASE, peer tutors, peer mentoring, counseling, career services. CASE stands for Center for Academic Success and Enrichment. These are tutors. They're usually second-year students who can help you out if you need extra assistance, and it's completely free, which is amazing. I've used them. Can say 10 out of 10 experience. Your faculty is also very supportive. They're hands-on. They have a very much open door policy. They have office hours, and in summary, we just really want you to succeed. And MCPH always gave me, from like applying to now, they really pride themselves on like your success and you doing well.
So our Manchester campus is located in southern New Hampshire, just about an hour north of the city of Boston. The campus is in downtown Manchester, which is known for its New England charm with small businesses and shops, local restaurants, and of course, historic architecture. Within a short walk or drive for campus, students have access to parks, museums, local sports, theaters, a concert venue, and more. We're also well placed for a quick ride into Boston, the seacoast, the lake region, and the mountains. Manchester and the surrounding area is home to about 15 colleges and universities. Our campus was established in 2002, and we've since grown to offer 4 different healthcare programs in Manchester. All programs at this campus are offered year-round, and most are accelerated. At around 400 students, this smaller campus makes for an intimate, close-knit atmosphere. You're not only going to know each other and each of your classmates, but you become close to your faculty and students from other programs quickly. This campus has a strong sense of community and will add additional support structure that comes in useful during your busy graduate studies. Although our programs are very busy, studying most days of the week outside of class, our students are also very involved in campus life, in the Manchester community, and different organizations and clubs. About a 45 to 50-minute drive from Boston is where you find our Worcester campus, the second largest city in New England after Boston. Worcester is an area where you'll find healthcare right at your fingertips. For example, St. Vincent's Hospital is visible right from our front steps. We have rotations there and at UMass Memorial, and there are various other clinical opportunities within a 10-mile radius. This is an up-and-coming city that has a rich history. NPR actually deemed Worcester the new IT town in 2018, and it's become a booming hub of innovation. Once an old mill town, this area now has lots of restaurants, sports centers, arenas, and parks. It's centrally located, allowing easy access to cities, the mountains, and the coast. The university has invested in the Worcester campus over the past decade to include new buildings, updated classrooms and lab facilities, and on-campus housing. All programs at the Worcester campus are year-round, just as in Manchester. The Worcester campus is unique in that it hosts several on-site clinics which serve members of the community in optometry, dental hygiene, physical therapy, and acupuncture. The campus also has a graduate on-campus housing option such as studio apartments, suites, and 2 to 3 bedroom condos. Now let's focus on the Boston campus. Boston's located right in the heart of the Longwood medical area, just a quick walk away from prestigious healthcare communities and other facilities like Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Brigham and Women's, and Boston Children's. Boston is the epicenter for healthcare in New England, where each day more than 46,000 employees and 21,000 students come to work and learn. The LM area averages 6,500 job openings annually, and 2.6 million patients are seen each year. The Boston campus primarily contains undergraduate programs, but there are still many graduate program offerings. Unlike our Worcester and Manchester campuses, most programs on the Boston campus are not accelerated. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Michaela. She's going to start talking a little bit more in depth about our programs.
All right, thank you so much, Meg. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the PA programs themselves. So first, we're going to go ahead and talk about our accelerated PA program on both our Worcester and Manchester campuses. So this accelerated program has a spring start, which is a unique start date, and it's kind of nice because it's a time where not a lot of other PA programs will be graduating. So this means that you have a graduation time in December, which is a time when fewer people are applying for job positions, which will kind of give you a little boost in the job market when you graduate. This program does go year-round, including the summers, which is why it is accelerated. You'll have 12 months of didactic year, and then go into 12 months of your clinical rotations. This will be 9 5-week rotations, generally all over the Northeast. We'll talk a little bit more about that on another slide, but so for seats on our campuses, the Worcester campus has 70 seats available, and the Manchester campus has 55. Something we do like to note here is that there are no differences between the two programs. The only differences are the seat size and the location, but everything else is the same, including the acceptance rate. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, let's go into talking a little bit about our Boston campus. So for our Boston program, slightly different. This program starts in the fall semester in September. It is about 30 months long, where you have 4 semesters of your didactic classwork and then 3 semesters of your clinical rotations. This program follows the typical fall-spring schedule during your 4 didactic summers. So you'll have the summer semesters off on the Boston campus, and then after those 4 semesters, you'll go into year-round summers included, beginning in the summer after your 2nd year in the program, when you're on your clinical rotations. Similar to the accelerated program, this is also 9 5-week rotations, generally across the Northeast. Boston is a little bit different because we have 100 seats in Boston. Keep in mind that we do have a 3-and-3 track for pre-PA students, so some of those seats will first go to them. So something to keep in mind. All right, let's go into talking a little bit about your clinical year. So as I mentioned, you'll have those 9 different rotations that you'll complete during your program, regardless of which campus you're on. These are the rotations that we offer. So just to name a few: medicine, primary care, psychiatry, surgery. And then you'll also have a general elective that you can pretty much pick anything you want for. Pretty popular one is dermatology. A lot of students do something like that. So you get to pick for your 9th rotation, not necessarily your last one, but your 9th rotation. During your didactic year, you will be reached out to about signing up for those rotations, so you can plan for that accordingly. As I mentioned a little bit before, this will be all over the Northeast, but we do have a higher concentration of clinical sites in Southern New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So these are just some of the places that we have a lot of our rotation sites. As you can see here, mostly the Northeast. We do have more than 600 available clinical sites that you'll be able to kind of pick from, or if you have your own that you want to request, you can do that as well. And yeah, you'll be able to pick from there. We also have some sites out of New England as well. So if let's say you lived in California and you wanted to request to do a site out there, that is also possible. You just have to look into that and request it. So you can do that as well. We also do have some international rotations that do require an additional application if you are interested in that. But let me send it over. Well, Miriam or Jessica, I don't think you've done the process yet this year for picking your rotations, have you? Okay, yeah, so I'll give a little bit of an insight on that. So when you do your rotations, when you go to pick your rotations, how that's going to look is the students will get the list of clinical affiliations that we have, you'll be able to say like, I want this for my first, second, and third choice, and put in your preferences. Or if, like I mentioned before, if you want somewhere that we don't have and they do have availability for you to be able to do your clinicals there, you can request that as well, and we can reach out to them to try to set that up for you. So they'll try to give you your first choice. If they can't, they'll move on to your next one. And if they can't place you in any of them for some reason, then they'll work with you to find you another one, generally in the Northeast.
Just gonna jump in really quick. So, just so everybody knows, no matter which MCPHS campus you're in the PA program for, all of your clinical rotations are guaranteed. We have clinical coordinators specific to our PA students, as well as our other programs in MCPHS as well that require clinicals, but all of them are guaranteed. So as Michaela mentioned, if you have someone that could be a preceptor for you, that's something we can build a clinical affiliation with, but you're not going out finding them yourself, essentially. You will be guaranteed them. And you will be placed in them. You'll know before you head out on your rotations where all 9 of your rotations are. There is a chance that that might change depending on the situation, but you will at least have all of your 9 rotations before you start your semesters of clinical rotations.
Thank you so much, Christine. All right, so great. Let's go into talking a little bit about direct patient care. We know that's kind of a big question that we get for your application, because obviously it's a big part of that. So let's go ahead and give you some quick reminders. So first, the job description and day-to-day responsibilities are more important than the job title itself. So if you're trying to find out if something qualifies for patient care experience, look at the actual duties of the position. Is it hands-on? Things like that. That's going to matter more than the actual title itself. Next, all patient care hours must be completed prior to applying to the PA program. So we will not take updates in patient care experience after you've submitted your application. The only thing we can take updates in are academics. Anything academic we can take updates in. Okay. And lastly, patient care experience may not include caring for a relative or family member. So if you worked at home taking care of somebody that in your family, that wouldn't count. It does have to be somebody outside of that. All right, so these are just some of the examples of things that we will accept for patient care. So positions that have things like administering medications, performing procedures, drawing blood, obtaining EKGs, taking vitals. Those are all things that if the position had within it, we could count towards patient care. You'll see on here the list of roles as well. So we put this out there just so you can see these are some of the roles that generally do have patient care involved with them. You'll see medical scribe is on here as well. We do accept that. That's probably the only non-hands-on position that we accept right now. So, but keep that in mind, because if you are a medical scribe, that will count for patient care experience as well. A couple other things. So for things that qualify, you'll see on here, generally things that will qualify for patient care are things that require a license, such as a CNA, LNA, medical assistant, EMT. Those are all things that definitely will qualify. Candidates are encouraged to seek out patient care settings where a PA does work. So for example, you'll see on this list here that we can count things such as a dentist or optometrist's office, working in either one of those offices. But if you can get somewhere where a PA works, that is even better. I'm going to go ahead and transfer over to our students and have them, if you guys wouldn't mind just sharing what you did for patient care experience before you started the program, I think that'd be helpful.
So I was a medical scribe, so I love that MCPH takes that. I was a medical scribe and I was also a physiotherapist aide. That's what I did for my PCEs.
I worked as a medical assistant in primary care, and I also did a little bit of work as a surgical assistant for oral and facial surgery.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and transfer over to Christine and let her talk a little bit about our requirements.
Kayla. So I also just want to remind everybody who is watching right now, you can use the chat function or the Q&A function in Zoom for us to answer any questions, either us in admissions here or our students. I'm happy to answer any questions from the Boston perspective, but if you have specific questions for our students, they're the best resource for you right now. But let's talk about the admissions requirements. So you can see here that there are some differences between our campuses. And as Michaela and Meg were, speaking of, there's some differences in the program. So this is actually a question that just came in through the Q&A, which I will answer live here, is that you actually have to choose one campus. So CASPA opens in less than a month, and you have to only choose one MCPHS campus to apply to. I'll say that again later in a few slides, but we're all MCPHS, even though we're different programs for PA, so we only can consider you for one of our campuses. CASPA will say that to you when you're hitting which campus to apply to, but they also won't stop you, so we'd rather have you save your money because we will make you decide which campus you want to be considered for. So one of the things is the slight differences between the programs, which we're going to highlight in the next few slides. So with our Boston campus, we're looking for overall science and prerequisite GPAs being at least a 3.0. That has to be the minimum to be considered for an interview. You must have 250 direct patient care hours at the time you hit submit on your application in CASPA. PA shadowing is recommended. It is not required. But we always make the funny cliche saying you wouldn't want to buy a car without test driving it. So shadowing hours is only going to help your application, but it's not required. It's not going to dock your application if you don't have it. For our Manchester and Worcester Accelerated PA program, we have a minimum GPA of a 3.0 overall, 3.2 science, and 3.2 prerequisite. 250 to 500 direct patient care hours at the time of submission. It is still listed as recommended under our accreditation, but Michaela can attest to it as well, and Meg, that we have not accepted anybody in at least the whole 5 years that I've been at MCPHS, that students who don't have any patient care hours are below that level. So just keep that in mind. It's just going to benefit you. Same for our Worcester and Manchester campus, that PA shadowing is recommended. I do also want to note that meeting these minimum requirements does not guarantee you an interview. It makes you interview eligible, but in a few slides, we'll talk about what our averages are. One thing I do want to note as well is that for patient care hours, 250 is the absolute lowest. It's probably the lowest you're going to see at any PA program, at least in the Northeast. Most of our students and who are admitted to the program have over 1,000 hours, so something to keep in mind as well. So with the next slide here, it just shows the differences that we have for our prerequisites. When you're emailing us, if you're asking about bio, we know you're talking about the Boston program. If you're asking about A&P with the lab, you're most likely speaking about Worcester and Manchester, but there are some slight differences, so please keep that in mind. For Boston, we don't require the labs for A&P. We require bio 1 and 2, and only 3 semesters of chemistry with not a specific for chemistry besides one being an upper level. When you look over at our Manchester and our Worcester campus, we require anatomy and physiology with the labs, specifically general chemistry, organic chemistry, and biochemistry as separate prerequisites. So whichever campus you're applying to, just make sure that you keep that in mind. So when are we applying? As I said before, one campus only, please. CASPA opens up on April 24th. If you don't know, it's the final Thursday of every April, every single year. For our Boston campus, this will be for the fall of 2026 entry. We have a September 1st, 2025 deadline. For our Manchester and our Worcester program, we have a spring of 2027 entry, so one semester after Boston would start. And as we mentioned earlier, that's a January start, and has a January 15th of 2026 deadline. I just said a lot of 2020s there. Please take a picture of this, whatever you need. it can get a little confusing. So everything's done about a year in advance. That's one thing to keep in mind. It's a little easier to understand. But when you're applying through CASPA, you're sending all of your transcripts from every school you've completed college coursework. This includes dual enrollment classes if you took classes at a community college and high school. This includes if you're a transfer student, wherever you've taken college classes, you're sending those official transcripts to CASPA. We have 3 letters of recommendation required. CASPA allows you to submit up to 5. If you have taken coursework outside of the US, we do require a transcript evaluation. So a WES or an ECE, but please note that prerequisites have to be completed at a US or Canadian institution. And if English is not your first language, we do need a proficiency exam submitted as well. So specifics, all your prerequisites have to be completed with a C or higher. That is not a C minus, a C or higher for them to be considered complete. Students are eligible to apply with no more than 2 in progress or outstanding prerequisite courses at the time that you submit your application. And there is a 10-year limit on all math and science prerequisites. As we mentioned, meeting these minimums is not going to guarantee you an interview, but when we're looking at applications, we're looking at them holistically. So competitive applications typically are students who have higher GPAs, have completed all the prerequisites already, have had many experiences in PA, whether that be your patient care plus shadowing or just your patient care. And then when you submit your application, we are rolling admissions, but we review as we receive and send decisions out all at once. So if you're submitting earlier in the cycle, you may be invited earlier to interview. So that will just benefit you. We do require an interview. For our Boston campus, historically, we do interviews mid-summer to usually November through fall. For Manchester and Worcester, we start interviews in October and typically complete them in February or March. And interview invitations come by email. What you can expect from interviews is that there is an introductory presentation or video, depending on the style of the interview. You will interview with faculty. There's a written exercise additionally in Boston, and there's a student panel, which is also in Boston as well, but we have it listed right here as Worcester and Manchester. And then you'll just have a brief kind of overview after your interview with the office, in admissions, just to know what your timeline looks like. I always like to pass this off to the students to see what your interview experience was, how you prepared for your interview, especially, you ended up at MCPHS, so. Whichever one of you wants to speak.
I'll go first. I applied really, really early, so I was lucky enough to get a interview within one of the first couple rounds, which I was super grateful for because I didn't have to worry about it later on down the road. But my biggest tip, I guess, would be like practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the better you're gonna feel with the questions. I had anyone who was willing to ask me questions, and I also recommend doing mock interviews. I know some schools offer mock interviews, which are super, super, super helpful. I did mine with the PA platform. They gave me like some feedback on mine, which was really helpful to identify like if I had nervous tics or things I could clarify better. But overall, it's really not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was more of like a conversation and not as much of an interrogation as I was expecting. So it was super laid back, and it was really nice to meet some of the professors before you actually would be accepted and starting in the program.
So I actually had an opposite experience of Jessica. I applied later, I guess, like in terms. I found about MCPHO. It's never too late to apply, I will say that. And so I got really lucky that I had my interview in February, and I'm the same with Jessica, where like practice. But I think one thing that really helped me too was like reading my personal statement before my interview to really solidify like my YPA, and just like be able to talk about and just show your passion for the profession as well. So yeah, definitely practice, get a friend, definitely read your personal statement. And yeah, it's a really, it was my funnest interview by far. The professors that interviewed me, the professors that are now teaching me. So that's just like they recognize you, and it's a really good conversation. Like, oh, I remember you when I interviewed you, and very laid back, very nice. The profs make it a very welcoming and calming environment. So don't be too nervous about that.
You both, yes. I hear from students every year that it definitely was one of their more like, interactive, relaxing interviews with our faculty. So, you know, a lot of the time they've decided to come to MCPHS because they feel really comfortable and welcome here. So thank you both for sharing. So before we go into the Q&A section, I just want to answer some frequently asked questions that we get. Michaela, Meg, and I receive emails all day long, every day, no matter what time of the cycle it is. And so these are our most common ones that we get. So for our average incoming GPAs, every year that I've been here, over 5 years now, it's sat right around these averages. So Boston, you're looking at 3.6 to 3.7 for all three GPAs. Manchester and Worcester, same thing, about a 3.59 to a 3.7 for those three GPAs. We do not have a supplemental application. When you choose MCPHS in CASPA, there are program-specific questions that you'll answer directly into CASPA, but we do not have any additional application after you submit your CASPA. We are rolling admissions, but it's a little different than the traditional sense of rolling admissions. You may hear other PA programs speak about how they interview students, send them a decision within 2 weeks, start filling their class. At MCPHS, all three of our campuses, we're interviewing all of our applicants typically, and then sending out a decision all at once. So that's how our Boston campus works. I know our Manchester and Worcester campus usually has like kind of two rounds of interviews. So, you know, they're interviewing earlier, sending out some decisions, and then interviewing students and sending out more decisions. So a little different than what you typically hear for rolling admissions. But we do start reviewing applications as they start coming in. So I can speak as a Boston counselor. Those applications start coming in the week after a CASPA opens. We'll start reviewing them at that point. So we do not require any standardized testing at MCPHS. So no GRE, no PA CAT, no MCAT, no CASPER, none of that is required to apply. And if you do submit it, we'll see it in your CASPA application, but it's not considered because it's not required for anyone. So don't even bother submitting them unless you submit it for another program. Patient care experience from another country does count as long as it meets what Michaela was saying, where it needs to be hands-on patient care experience. Prerequisites can be completed online or at a community college. We're looking for any regionally accredited institution. If you have specific questions, does this fit? Just email us. Our emails will be at the final slide here, but just let us know. We're happy to answer those questions for you, but it's okay if they're taken online, labs as well. MCPHS, we don't have a preference, but it just has to be a regionally accredited institution. Foreshadowing, we know we don't require it, but if you do submit any shadowing hours, we will only count hours shadowing a PA. It's great to have hours shadowing an MD or an NP because that's just going to help you in your answers of why you want to be a PA, right? But we won't count those towards any type of shadowing hours. We do not update any applications after they're verified by CASPA because we just don't have the capacity with the amount of applications that come in. So what your application looks like when you hit submit on CASPA is what we're going to consider. So patient care hours, all of that is what it is when CASPA verifies it and sends it to us. The only difference is, you know, if you just finished a prereq and you want to add that in, we'll take those academic updates, but we don't recalculate your GPA from there. So what it says on CASPA is what your GPA is going to be considered. A lot of students get this mixed up because the way that it's written online is that we don't accept advanced classes, meaning if you were at another PA school and you're trying to come to our PA school, you have to do all of your professional classes with us. AP classes, advanced placement classes from high school, is a completely separate thing, and we do accept those as prerequisite credit. You have to have at least a 4 or a 5 on the exam for that prerequisite to be considered completed. And it needs to be within the 10-year mark, is the same for math and science prereqs. Your AP score needs to be within those 10 years as well. And if your GPA falls below the minimum requirement of those 3.0s, or 3.2 for Manchester or Worcester, we cannot consider you for our program because it's an extremely competitive program, and we're just not able to accept students or consider students who fall below those minimum requirements. So the last slide here has all of our information. Michaela, you just have to click one more time. There you go. So it has all of our information here. So any Manchester questions, Meg is your person. Worcester questions, Michaela. Boston questions, me. We, if you want to email us, you want to send us, you know, text on any of those numbers, calls, we're happy to help. We do individual appointments on campus or by Zoom or email, phone. So please feel free to reach out. There's also open houses that happen, so you're welcome to visit any of our campuses as well. So over to the question and answer. I'm gonna have Michaela do that, but we'll all kind of jump in as the questions come through.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Christine. So, for some of our questions in here, I'm just gonna jump right in and start answering some of them. So a lot of people had some questions about the rolling admissions and stuff like that. So just to start, yes, you can only apply to one of our campuses. If you do apply to one, like let's say you applied to, Boston, you found out you were not getting accepted, and then you wanna go apply to Worcester, Manchester, you can do that, but you cannot have 2 applications open at once. We do have rolling admissions, as Christine was talking about. More on the Worcester Manchester campus, it's more like rolling interview seats. So I saw someone kind of ask a question about that. So keep that in mind. It is possible to fill a cohort before the application does close. That is possible. So keep that in mind. That is why applying early is so important, because we do have those rolling admissions type of things there, or rolling interview seats depending on the campus. Let's see here. So a couple questions, as well as a couple clarifying questions about requirements out if you're international and stuff like that. So as Christine was talking about, if you have international coursework, you will have to submit a course by course evaluation either through WES or ECE, as well as if English is not your first language and you did not get a degree in the US, you will also have to submit an English language proficiency exam, either from TOEFL or Duolingo. So keep that in mind. If English is your first language, or you got a bachelor's degree in the United States, then you do not have to send in the English proficiency exam. Okay. Let's see here. For clinical rotations, we did have a question about housing and things like that. I would have our students jump in, but unfortunately they're not there quite yet, even though they'd love to talk to you about it. So yes, for housing, you are responsible for your own housing when you go on clinical rotations. Something that's pretty popular, I highly recommend talking to your clinical leaders for faculty members when you get to that portion and you're trying to figure out housing, because they generally have some really good suggestions. Like, for example, we have MCPHS alumni that have Airbnbs in certain areas next to big clinical affiliations that they'll rent out to the MCPHS students. So things like that. So there are definitely options that we will help you with, but you are responsible for the housing in general.
One other thing that I want to add is, so a lot of our students are What's really beneficial is that our students who are currently in clinical rotations, like they all have running kind of Excel docs that they share with each other. So, hey, I'm doing this rotation in Connecticut. This is where I stayed. Like, this is a great Airbnb. So, students all kind of share that as they, or go down for the next classes to be able to see. So there's a lot of that. Students will do, Airbnbs since your rotations are only 5 weeks in length. And you are responsible for that. On top of since we're talking about clinical rotations, another question that came through was about international rotation. So if you don't mind, Michaela, I'm just going to jump in and answer that. So the question here was, are they typically offered for each cohort? What are they available and where? So for our PA programs, you are only eligible to do a clinical rotation that is a general elective in a different country. So that's by standard of accreditation, that's by PANCE standards. So in Boston, there's 2 general electives, so you could potentially do 2 abroad rotations. In Worcester and Manchester, there's 1 general elective, so you could potentially do 1 abroad. But as Michaela had mentioned, it requires a separate application to be considered for that. Some of the sites that we've had in the past, I have one of my PA students who's going into their clinical rotations in May, just got accepted to Switzerland. We also have rotations in Ghana, in Belize, in Bolivia. We've been trying very hard to get our rotation back up in China. And so there's a lot of different options for students. It does vary year to year, but those are the clinical affiliations that we have as an institution with any abroad rotations.
Awesome. Thanks, Christy. All right, let's go into, there's still some questions about like the requirements as in the application as well. So I'm going to keep talking about that a little bit. So one student asked about 5 letters of recommendation that you can submit and what kind of letters we're kind of looking for that. Generally, so we require that you submit 3 letters of recommendation. Keep in mind that CASPA will verify your application after 2 have been submitted. So you just want to make sure that you're keeping track of that 3rd one if it's verified before that. But for those 3, we're at least looking for 1 academic and 1 professional. We highly recommend trying to get, like this student actually kind of suggested, we do highly recommend trying to get, if you shadowed with a PA or worked with a PA, something like that, a letter from a professor in your studies. Those are great. If not, though, it doesn't have to be. It just should be somebody that's at least, above you in a sense. It shouldn't be like a regular coworker or a family member or something like that. Great. Let's see. So another question we have for requirements was about how we kind of prioritize our requirements in our holistic view. So obviously your 2 main biggest factors on your application are going to be your GPAs and your patient care experience. Those 2 things are going to be looked at the most on your application. With that being said, we do take a holistic view. So there are many things that could make a difference to us. So small things that matter to us, make sure that you list all of your experiences, even if you think it's something that's not worth putting on there, volunteer work, research work, all that kind of stuff. Put that on there because we will look at it. Alongside that, you have a lot of sections on your application where it gives you opportunity to share your story in a sense, where you can talk about why you maybe had to withdraw from a class, why you maybe failed a course, things like that. So make sure you're taking the time to explain those things because we do take a look at that and take some of that into consideration. Things like positive grade trends, how many courses you're taking a semester, things like that. Those can all be things that can help your application. All right, let's see. Alongside of that, a student asked about the average number of patient care experience for Worcester, Manchester. I know it's about 2,000. Christine, about the same for Boston.
I would say it's 1,000 plus.
1,000 plus, correct. Yeah, so yeah, if you have more than 1,000 hours, we consider that pretty good for either campus, for any of our campuses, we should say. So yeah, that's kind of a goal we give our students to get above 1,000.
One question that I just wanted to jump in. I know that's moving quick, Michaela, so I'm just trying to help here. There's a question here that says, my undergrad only offers physiology with a lab and anatomy with no lab. So if you're looking at There's two different subsets that can fit in with the anatomy and physiology requirements. So if you have a full semester of anatomy, human anatomy, and a full semester of human physiology, that will satisfy the prerequisites. If you have a full semester of A&P1 and a full semester of A&P2, that will satisfy the requirements. You cannot dip from both of those buckets. So you can't have a full semester of anatomy and physiology 1 and a full semester of human physiology. That doesn't complete the sequence. And there is a question about that, specifically asking if you were to do that and you're missing the labs in that sense. So if you have a lab for your anatomy and not for your physiology, then you're missing the physiology lab for the accelerated programs. So you would need to take a physiology lab separately to be able to complete that requirement. There is a question for our students specifically that I want to pass off so you can stop hearing us talk and our students answer that question. So did it go for the students? So what is the culture or student life like at MCPHS? And how would you kind of explain your relationship with your classmates? Do you find it competitive? Do you find it collaborative? Could each of you speak on that?
I can start talking about the Worcester campus. So there is 70 of us, but it truly feels like we're like one big family. Like everyone is very approachable. Everyone talks to each other. Maybe it's a little bit of a trauma bond because we're all going through it together. But the culture has been really, really good. We're all pretty close. We're all helping each other out. Like I will say, compared to like undergrad, there's a lot of like sending each other like Quizlets. You get very close to them, and everyone's willing to lend a hand to help you. So I would say, even though there's 70 of us, it is like a big, big family, and you get to meet everybody and be really close to everyone. So that's the Worcester campus.
For Manchester, it is a little bit smaller, so you do get to know everyone very, very quickly, which is, I find really helpful. For my campus particularly, wherever you sit, it's kind of where you stay for the rest of the year. So once you pick your seat, pick it well. But the people who surround you, like in front of you, next to you, behind you, they really become your closest friends very, very quickly, which is really nice to always have someone you know you can rely on. And as Miriam said, you're all in the same boat, like everyone's going through this intense program together. So there's no real competitive nature. Everyone's working to help each other. Like it's so common to go out of like the classroom and find people in the library being like, I don't understand this. Can someone help me? And there's 3 or 4 people willing to jump in and try to explain things to them. So it's really not competitive at all. It really is like one big group working together, because at the end of the day, if you all graduate and you're all PAs, like that could be someone who's treating your family member. So working together and helping everyone understand everything. And it's really just, it's a good community. I was honestly really surprised at how quickly everyone meshed together on Manchester specifically. So I'd give it 2 thumbs up.
I don't want to speak as a Boston student because I'm not, but definitely hear the same things echoed for our Boston campus, is that it's a collaborative environment. There are 100 students in our Boston program, so it is a little bigger, but you know, you find your group and you stick with them in that sense. There was also a question about academic supports for students. So you both had mentioned this just a tiny bit in the beginning. So could one of you or both of you, whatever you want to do, speak on what support there is in the program, either tutoring or, you know, faculty support, and then any type of mentoring?
I can start. So you'll find that when you get here, farm is a little bit difficult to grasp. So I got a farm tutor very quickly on during the semester because I knew it was something that I was having a hard time grasping, and it was just very nice to have someone who's gone through it already. And now she's like become one of my friends who's in second year, so I'm always reaching out to her, and they're always available to reach out. And that's just not for farm, but for every class you're gonna take. In your first year, in your first semester, and they really help because they've been through it, and so they're always available. So I've had a really, really good experience with them, and they're just like really lovely to chat with and like learn more about each class, and you know, upcoming like the second years, and like what you're gonna have in second year and everything like that. So.
Awesome. Jessica, anything to add, or does that pretty much sum it up? Awesome. Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Miriam. Okay, so another question a student had on here, going back to talking about a little bit about the prerequisites. So yeah, good question. Something to keep in mind, if you are applying, you can apply with up to 2 prerequisite courses still outstanding, as well as your bachelor's degree still outstanding. As long as you complete them for Worcester, Manchester, you have to complete them the December before the program starts. And for Boston, Christine, I'm assuming have to complete any missing prereqs before August. Perfect. Yeah. So any missing prereqs then before August for Boston. So keep that in mind. And also we consider a lecture and lab combo as one missing prerequisite. So that's something to keep in mind as well. We had a couple questions about applications we receive and things like that as well. So for the accelerated program, we generally receive over 800 applications, and for Boston over 1,000.
Over 2,800
Oh my goodness.
applications that we received, over 2,800 in Boston.
Oh, sorry, Christine. I don't know where this number on mine just came from, but yeah, okay, over 2,800 in Boston, and for interviews, over 400 for Boston. For Worcester, Manchester, we have over about 150 for those. Let's see here. Perfect. Some couple good questions here for our students. So Miriam and Jessica, would you mind talking a little bit about what your biggest challenges were and your like biggest adjustments that you had going into your first year?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I had to adjust that I was kind of expecting to adjust and not expecting to adjust. First, what I was expecting was your time. It really does kind of go away because it's accelerated. So really just making sure you're able to set boundaries with friends and family to be like, hey, I have 3 exams this week, like I really need to study, and just making sure you're comfortable with setting those boundaries, which is kind of hard for me. I don't like saying no to anybody, but when it comes time to, making sure you're succeeding in school. So that was definitely an adjustment. In terms of studying, just changing the way I studied was a bit of a change I wasn't expecting. I really liked how I studied in undergrad, but obviously with different material and different professors, I kind of had to adjust it as I got into grad level. So I used to just do a lot of like passive note taking in undergrad and just kind of like talking things out with people. And that obviously had to change because you need to really fully understand what you're learning and why it's important. So Quizlets, doing some whiteboarding, again, talking things out with people is really, really helpful. So just kind of figuring out like my study strategies was definitely an adjustment getting into PA school.
I second that. Everything that Jessica said. I think it's a universal experience. Yeah, I really had to change up my study method, and I think in undergrad too, like Jessica was saying, like you're not just absorbing this information and like dumping it out. You're really like applying it. So when you learn about, like, for example, like a disease, you're looking from every class, from the anatomy perspective and the patho perspective. So that's a change to really look at something and look at it in so many different perspectives and learn about it. And you really are applying. You're going to practice doing physical exams. You're going to be you're in lab, and you're going to be learning all the different skills. So I guess it's challenging because it's also new, but it's very, very fun as well. And I think, just like Jessica said, I think knowing that PA school is going to be our priority for the next 2 years and setting those boundaries, and that's when really you have to lean on your classmates as they're going through them with you, and we're all there to support each other. So I will say I definitely echo everything she said.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Would one of you also just mind sharing, one of our questions is about how many exams you typically have per week, but if you wouldn't mind sharing what like a typical week looks like for you, and then include that in there, that'd be great. We only have a few more minutes left, so we'll probably do that and then another question or two. But yeah, that would be great.
I can just start off with this week. So this week we just had today like our Clin Med exam, and then tomorrow we have an anatomy quiz, and then on Friday we have pathophysiology exam. So usually I want to say, and Jessica can like jump in whenever you want. Usually it's 3 exams, maybe sometimes it's 4 for including like quizzes or practicals. It really depends, but there is so many different ways you're being tested. So some on exam form, some you're doing practicals, like you're in lab and you're performing physical exams. Some you're having quizzes. You also have assignments as well that are due. So I would say like 3 is what I've noticed right now, but Jessica, let me know if you feel the same way.
I do think it fluctuates. Like we have 3 exams or like 3 testing materials this week. We had 3 last week, and next week we have nothing. So it really does change. So when you have those weeks when you don't have anything, it's super important to do something you like to do to remind yourself that you're a human, you're not just a student. But it also helps you like break up like the exam schedule. They do try and separate it, so you'll always have like 1 exam per day. It's never multiple tests a day, which I really appreciate. But yeah, it's mostly, I would say probably 2 or 3 a week, is kind of what we're getting into the role of now, which is a lot, but it's definitely doable.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So we only have a couple more minutes here, so we will go ahead and end on what I think is a lot of times one of our favorite questions. If you could just both share what your #1 piece of advice would be going into the program, which you maybe already talked about a little bit, but if you could just share what your #1 piece of advice would be for somebody applying to the program and an incoming student, that would be great.
We'll start this one. So for anyone who's applying or is waiting to start, I recommend taking time off before you go to school. I traveled, I visited my sister, she lives in another country. So taking the time to do something you really are looking forward to doing, kind of getting yourself in that mindset of like, I'm going to be nose to the grindstone for the next year and a half, 2 years, making sure you're mentally ready. And then that also gives you the time to start like checking the boxes like, oh, I have my certifications done, I've got all my coursework ready. So it having some time off before you start will help you just make sure you have everything you need and you'll be like refreshed and rejuvenated before you start school.
One advice I would give is to really hone in on like your self-care strategies, just like Jessica, whether that be spending time with your family, whether that be journaling. Mine was like Pilates and exercise. So whether you're an applicant, because I know CASPA can be really stressful, whether you're waiting to start PA school, like having those habits already in like kind of like in your pocket before you start will like really help you just as the program is rigorous, and just making that 30 minutes just to go on a walk or go to Pilates or go to the gym. I think it's just really important for like your, not only like your physical health, but also for like your mental health. Giving that break for yourself. So that's the advice I would give.
Thank you both so much. All right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here. I appreciate Miriam, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here today to talk about your experience. Christine and Meg, thank you so much. And of course, to our attendees, thank you for joining us today. We still have those contact informations on there. So if you have any questions, remaining questions, feel free to reach out to us. And on the bottom there are some of our links as well. If you are interested in coming to visit anytime soon, go ahead and take a look. Thank you so much for being here. We hope you have a good rest of your day.